Hey, Laura here from The Unprofessional, and today I am in my woodshop dungeon making some custom closet doors. Now my custom closet doors are going to be made out of framing lumber and some standard 36 by 60 inch mirrors. These are going to be really easy to make and super affordable, less than $100 per door. My first step is going to be to do all my cross cuts on my miter saw. After that, I'm going to run this framing lumber through my table saw in order to make it look a little less like framing lumber. I'm going to take off kind of this rounded corner and just clean it up so it'll look really nice. After that, I'm going to run all of my pieces through the table saw like this so that I can cut in channels, and those channels are going to be what holds the mirror into place. After that, I'm going to use some pocket screws to attach all of the pieces of wood, do some sanding and paint, and I will have my custom closet doors. Okay, let's back up a second. The reason I'm making custom closet doors is because I have wasted space in my attic bedroom that I wanted to fill with a closet. Because my attic's at a slope, everything had to be custom, including the doors. I started by making compartments for the closet, then I attached an angled header to the ceiling. Because my closet was going wall to wall, I decided I wanted 3 doors and a triple track. That took some problem solving, but I got it figured out. You can see videos from the rest of the closet project on my channel. Okay, back to the project at hand. I made my crosscuts first so that they'd be easier to handle on my table saw. A few things to keep in mind. Account for anything you plan to take off on the table saw in your measurements of your crosscuts. So if you're taking off a 1/4 inch from each edge, your 2x4 becomes 3 inches wide. This is important for the overall size of your frame. Also, leave space for floor and carpet clearance, and for a floor guide or a track if you decide to use one. If you have multiple doors on different tracks, like a bypass or a tripass for example, plan for a 1-inch overlap where each door meets. Planning the size of your frame, how it's going to line up to the mirror, and how it's going to fit into your closet is really important. So take some time to draw out your plans and make really precise measurements. Once I finished all my crosscuts, I was ready to use my table saw to make this look less like framing lumber by removing the rounded edge. I set the table saw to 1/8 of an inch. The blade is an extra 1/8 of an inch, so that way I was taking a 1/4 inch off of each side of lumber. Next, I did some math to figure out how deep into each 2x4 the mirror would sit, and I set the blade according to that depth. I made all my cuts, all my channels are in, and now I'm ready to put in the pocket holes. I'm ready to put in the pocket holes. So just kind of to give you a little look at this channel, what I did for this is I ran it through 2 passes on a table saw. So I set the channel in about 3/4 of an inch, and then I moved it over one more, just a blade's length. So the thickness of this channel is 1/4 of an inch. My mirror is 1/8 of an inch, but I wanted to give it just a little bit of room because I didn't want it to be too tight. So one thing to consider when you're putting in pocket holes is, now that I have this channel here and the mirror is going to sit in, I don't want the chance of a screw going through and hitting the mirror because that will break it. So I'm only considering this as the surface for the pocket holes to screw into. Does that make sense? I'm setting the depth of my pocket jig just to this space here, because I don't want any chance of a screw going through and chipping or breaking the mirror. So I'm just gonna set it to the 3/4 of an inch right here. For my design, the pocket holes go at the end of each vertical frame piece. Be sure to double check that you are indeed drilling into the back of each board, or else you're gonna have to remake a frame piece. My channels went all the way to the end of the frame pieces, and I didn't want that gap to show. So I cut very thin slices of scrap wood, covered them with wood glue, and just put them into the spaces. It would have been better if I let them dry a little bit before I cut them off with a saw, but ultimately I planned to fill this with wood putty anyways, so I wasn't that concerned about it being perfect. Okay, we're ready to make these look like they're not 2x4s anymore. So let's do some sanding. You ready? Sanding's not my favorite, but I have a helper. Ready to sand? Now let's do it. Sanding, filling, sanding again, priming and painting, it's all really important if you want to end up with something that looks nice. I filled in every gouge and knot, and there were many, because I didn't want this to look like what it was, a cheap 2x4. I decided to prime and paint before I put these together, just because I think it's gonna be easier. I won't have to tape up the mirror. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll regret it, but I think it's gonna be a good decision. I thought I only needed to paint the front of these, but when I put them up, I realized that the front two mirrors are reflected in the mirrors behind them. So I actually had to go back later and paint the backs of these doors. So I recommend just doing it all in one. You don't have to prep the backs of the doors quite as much, but I did do a sanding. I filled in the really deep gouges and I ended up priming and painting. So better to do it early rather than having to take them off and do it later. Okay, this is the moment that we, or at least I, have been waiting for. I'm gonna see if this works. Now I'm kind of winging it at this point. I've got my channels, I've got the mirror here. I don't really have a flat workspace other than here in my living room, so, and I don't have clamps big enough. So we'll see how this goes. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got these channels here. As you can see, everything's lined up. And we're just going to slide the mirrors into the channel and hope that they fit. It's helpful to do this part with someone else. Once the mirror is sitting in all the channels, it really helps keep everything lined up. I cut all the channels slightly deeper than I needed to so that the fit wasn't too tight. This was really helpful, but it did mean that I had to kind of align things a little bit. Once everything was positioned and square-ish, we screwed in the pocket screws. And the last thing to do before hanging these mirrors up was to place the hardware at the top of the door. Because I was going to be doing this 6 different times, twice on each door, I decided to make a little jig, and it made it really, really easy to know where to place the holes. All 3 of my mirrors are done, and I'm really happy with the way they turned out. Now, done is a relative term because I was planning on putting backs on the back of the mirror, but I'm not going to do that. What I was gonna do is I was gonna put in 1/2-inch foam, like the insulation board here, and then I was gonna cover it with that really thin press board and then nail it and paint it. This is actually just, I painted the frame, the same color as the front, obviously. The mirror just happens to be the exact same color as the frame. I did not paint this. So I feel like this is serendipitous, and it's a good reason for me not to put in the extra work on those few steps. I might regret this later. If something falls off my shelf, I might, and it smashes the mirror, I'm gonna wish I did this. But for right now, this is how they're gonna look. I hung the doors according to the track system that I used, finished some trimming, put in a floor guide, and was finally done with this project. And now for the before and after. What once was a wasted space is now a really useful closet with triple pass closet doors. I'm really happy with how these custom closet doors turned out, and I can hardly believe that each of them cost me about 75 bucks a piece. If you want to see the rest of this closet project, check it out here on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. This has been Laura from The Unprofessional. To see written instructions for this project and other DIY projects, visit my website, theunprofessional.com. And if you like this video, please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe.